In early November 2013, Typhoon Haiyan devastated the Philippines, leaving over 6,000 dead and 1,800 missing. Each day for weeks, another 20 to 30 people were found dead. U.S. foreign aid took an entire week to arrive, leaving citizens like Richard Pulga desperate for relief. Pulga passed away from an infection before medical aid arrived, just one example reflecting the failure of the current foreign aid system. Dear Congress, in 2014, we must reform foreign aid to save lives.
We only spend about 1% of our budget on foreign aid.
Aid is all worthless. It doesn't do any good for most of the people.
And that affects the economic development aid. If a country...
In these times of budget belt tightening, we need to find a better, more efficient way to distribute aid.
Foreign aid began following World War II, primarily to rebuild the economies and societies of Western Europe under the Marshall Plan.
We invested in rebuilding Europe, and a lot of these countries that once used to receive foreign aid, like Germany, like South Korea, like Brazil, look at these countries now.
In a world where 14% of people go to sleep hungry every night, American food aid saves millions of lives, from disaster relief to aid sent to starving children in impoverished countries. However, in 2014, Congress needs to make important steps towards increasing the distance taxpayer dollars go to helping countries in need.
The way the current law is written is there's a small portion that does allow us to buy locally. You know, let's say you have like a budget of $10 a year. 2 of those $10 can be spent buying regional food aid, but the rest of that 8 needs to be spent on U.S. grown food, and it needs to be shipped, okay? So we fortunately looked at the need with Typhoon Yolanda and said, all right, let's get that food there as quickly as possible. The needs are so dire. And so we've used up a lot of that $2 that we are able to use each year on the in need right now with Yolanda. But what happens if there's additional emergencies throughout the rest of this fiscal year? You know, in other regions where just given time, we need that food aid to be there right now, and that assistance, it's immediate.
As we face food insecurity crisis in Syria, Somalia, the Sahel, and the DRC, USAID is charged with the unenviable task of deciding who won't get the food aid they need because they have maxed out their ability to purchase food locally. The bottom line is that these artificial restrictions on our ability to respond to humanitarian emergencies must be reformed to make our programs more flexible and efficient.
Foreign aid must change to allow local procurement of food aid in order to benefit regional economies, which have been damaged in the natural disasters.
The U.S. to use the most appropriate tools to respond to emergencies, including local and regional procurement, cash transfers, vouchers, and agricultural commodities.
So when we talk about food aid, we say, okay, we've made some great progress, but there's still more that we can do. That's why we continue to push those issues of buying more locally and issues of monetization as well.
The Food Security Act of 1985 and the Food for Peace Act contain provisions that require all food aid to be purchased from preferred U.S. growers at reduced prices.
You know, you have U.S. grown foods that are then put on, you know, U.S. cargo ships and then shipped across to various regions where food aid is going.
This process, known as monetization, devastates economies close to where the food aid is going by not giving them the income they need to rebuild local agricultural markets.
It takes far too long to get food aid to starving people, wastes tens of millions of taxpayer dollars, and often harms agricultural markets in the countries we're trying to help.
And you cannot show that foreign aid is effective at promoting growth or promoting economic policies that are consistent with economic growth.
So essentially, U.S. foreign aid causes impoverished and devastated countries to rely on our aid, rather than encouraging local agricultural economies to rebuild.
We should export maybe some principles about free markets and sound money, and maybe they could produce some of their own wealth.
These regulations waste up to $471 million in taxpayer money each year and do not directly go towards helping the starving people around the world. This money should instead be spent on locally grown food in impoverished countries.
Modest, common sense reforms that will help the U.S. save more lives with our overseas food assistance while ending inefficient practices that waste U.S. taxpayer dollars.
Approximately 53 cents of every taxpayer dollar is being spent on overseas shipping prices and government-enforced shipping regulations. The average time for delivery of food aid from the U.S. is 130 days. If we encourage local farms to grow the food, it would be delivered in as few as 57 days.
I'm particularly supportive of Section 3008, which would increase flexibility in choosing between cash-based resources or commodities, thereby reducing the reliance on the wasteful practice of monetization.
Eliminating monetization would feed an additional 800,000 people. In the past decade, the number of worldwide natural disasters has increased by 200%. If America is really interested in making a difference around the world, we must make the effort to help these people fend for themselves. America must adapt its laws about food aid if it plans on helping people in need.